You've got to try and make the movies you want to see. You've got to make the movies you want to make rather than the movies you think you ought to make. In a way, I sort of just try and sort of still approach the movies I make as a film fan. Yeah, boy! Good time, having a good time. Shooting star leaping through the sky like a dragon, defying the laws of gravity. Even though my movies have had sort of like a similar stylistic aspects to them, or even sometimes a similar sense of humour.
It's about 2 foot tall, long, slender neck.
Yeah. I'm always trying to do like a different genre each time. And all of the films are sort of personal in a way, even the ones about like alien invasions or cops or like zombies. They're all like Trojan horses in a way, you know, you're making like a genre film to smuggle a lot of other stuff in.
That was amazing!
So let's meet accomplished filmmaker and splatstick specialist, Edgar Wright.
Danny boy? Describe what Marcellus Wallace looks like.
In the Grand Budapest.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
So yeah, how are you right now?
I'm okay. I'm good. I'm in central London. I've been here since coronavirus started, so it's very, very quiet. It's very strange being in the center of a city and there nobody being about. I feel like I'm living in one of my movies.
Yeah, it's like Shaun of the Dead.
Okay, welcome everybody. We have a local filmmaker here today to see you.
Where's a good hostage when you want one? You'll do. Oh, no! No, don't shoot me. Who's going to direct?
Please raise the roof for Edgar Wright.
This lecture hall, like, I do not remember this bit at all. This is all new to me. I haven't actually been in Bournemouth, I think, like 17 years or something. I grew up in the West Country, a small town, very pretty and rural, but kind of also sleepy and boring at the same time. Mm-hmm. I would gravitate towards, you know, escapism. My parents are both art teachers, so I was interested in illustration and animation.
I want to get into the movies, and that was made by Edgar Wright, who's joined us now.
I knew I wanted to do something kind of creative, and there was this documentary on British TV in the late 80s called The Incredibly Strange Film Show. The person I was first aware of that there was like an entry level was Sam Raimi, and hearing about the story of The Evil Dead and how he was 18 when he started it.
I felt under great pressure, and it was not artistic pressure, it was all financial pressure, because there were no expectations on me as a kid.
And so that was a real light bulb for me in terms of like, I want to do that, I want to be a director.
When I was very young, I would make these kind of like sort of genre like parodies. And because I'm like a kid that grew up in a small town in England, is this thing about like the reinterpretation of Hollywood movies.
Dead Right was my attempt at doing a Dirty Harry film. In fact, the title, Dead Right, is the working title for Dirty Harry.
I know what you're thinking, punk. You're thinking, did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
I decided I was going to make my Evil Dead and like make a film when I was like 20, and I made a 16mm film called A Fistful of Fingers, which is as silly as the title sounds.
I think even with the previous films, they're all made out of affection. The zombie films, the cop films, the sci-fi films, I love those.
Humor. You leave
us no recourse.
Like, I used to always bristle when people would call them send-ups. Sending up means that you're satirizing it, which in some ways makes it seem like you don't like it, whereas, like, I always saw them as Valentines.
People work in genre sometimes as a delivery system to get across ideas.
What do you mean?
You know, Shaun of the Dead is like, that's what it's about, is the idea of being complacent in life and complacent in relationships. And the zombies are like his wake-up call. You know, you can make some serious points in something funny.
Edgar, what prompted you to deal with the subject of wheelchair access?
Well, I saw a report on Film 91 about a year ago about disabled people not being able to get into cinemas because there isn't ramps and stairs. So I thought if I presented it in a sort of different way than just a straight documentary, it might be sort of, people would watch it first and then have to think about it after, which I thought, you know, might be more interesting.
It worked. It really did work, because you're the overall winner. Congratulations, Edgar. Let me tell you what prizes you get.
You, as a writer, you collaborate a lot with your fellow co-writers. What kind of things do you do to foster that collaboration?
Writing with other people is great, especially if you're doing a comedy. It's always a great thing to be in the room when you come up with something together.
Hello. Hello there.
This is the flip chart that we did for Hot Fuzz.
Sanford, approximately 5,000 population.
I suppose it was like having our own version of SimCity. We tried to create our own little world.
I'd like to talk about the writing of your scripts. If you have a method, if you like to use specific structures like the ones explained by Joseph Campbell or John Truby.
I find those things useful. Some of those screenwriting books, like Save the Cat, sort of have a really bad reputation as being formulaic. But if you're trying to make something within a genre and you're trying to subvert existing formulas, it can be useful to sort of look at those parameters.
Ah, there you go. Look at that. Nicholas Angel.
Ah, Sergeant Angel. Or is it Angle?
This is the character breakdown for Nicholas Angel. All this stuff turns up in the opening montage. The riot training.
The urban pacification and riot control quickly established an effectiveness and popularity.
His bilingual, you know, when he's speaking to the Mandarin couple, and the fencing and the judo.
So I think sometimes I find it useful in terms of like having the index cards of like the idea of it, so you've got the shape of it.
The entire film.
In flip chart form.
But Baby Driver is probably the weirdest writing experience.
Baby, you with us?
I wouldn't write the scene until I'd found the song.
There's something that I'd always had in my head of this marriage of music and visuals.
The synchronization with the music, the idea of that, when I saw the film, because I've spent my life listening to music as I write films and starting and trying to sort of synchronize the images in your head with particular tracks you're hearing. Is that the genesis?
Yeah, I mean, I did a similar thing when I wrote the other movies, as I would probably same as you, is listen to scores or instrumentals, or never things with lyrics. But like with this movie, I wrote only to the songs that are in the film. The idea of sort of soundtracking your life.
This man, Austin Powers. Doc said Michael Myers.
I would write what's happening in the action and what's happening in the song together.
Let's go. Wait. I gotta start the song over. Okay, go.
So like, that was always the pitch. It was like an action musical. But like music was always a big part of growing up for me, and I remember Know How by Young MC. I remember vividly hearing that in a Bournemouth bar and like going, what is this?
Can we skip my goddamn phone?
No.
Some of the busiest rhymes ever made by man are going into this mic written by this hand. They're coming out of this mouth made by this tongue. I tell you now, my name is Young. But so you think that it's your destiny to get the best of me, but I suggest it.
And so it's those weird things where sort of something like lodges with your own mental Shazam. It is a way that like I get inspired by music. You know, with Baby Driver, because we had all the music cleared before we started shooting, we knew what the songs were. We had edited together all of the storyboards to the music. He had this like 90-minute long animatic. With all of my movies, I'm going to do my absolute darndest to get this exactly as it is in my head. And part of that is that I'm going to draw what's in my head on the piece of paper, so it's just like board the whole thing. Both me and my brother draw, and both our parents were like art teachers. And it is interesting that the way that I make the live action movies is not a million miles away from how people make animation movies. Every single scene is storyboarded. Like every single scene, including the dialogue scenes.
Okay, let's start with Launchpad McQuack.
That's not the actual title of the song.
I remember as a teenager doodling kind of like rock bands, not unlike Sex Bomb on my school book. Even like the look of Sex Bomb when they're playing and they have kind of lightning bolts and jagged lines coming out. You know, I would describe it to the animators. I said it should look like a 14-year-old's idea of a rock band. The animation process where you draw something out in its entirety is not a million miles away from the way that I work doing live action.
Do that again, and I will end you.
Back off, Haspian. If Gideon can't have you, no one can.
You even, in some cases, have like the storyboards up on a big board. So at no point on any day is anybody on the crew saying, "What are we doing now?"
And the last question would be from about your process of work. There is one thing central to your work is editing.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
How you use transitions, repetition, and dramatic cuts.
I guess when I was very young, making amateur films, like one of the huge lessons I learned was that we didn't really have enough coverage. And so in the editing room, I was left without many choices. There wasn't really any way I could like pace up the movie.
The style of it, there's a lot of things that I kind of, in the 14-year gap between this and Hot Fuzz, have been endlessly trying to perfect, of like transitions. And wipes.
What about Lethal Weapon? No.
And whip hands.
I'm outside. What's the situation?
So the one good thing about Bournemouth is when it was a sunny day, nobody would be in the edit suite. I would be in the edit suite, learning how to edit, and I edited some of my first films.
No, no, help!
You've got to like use your time here to sort of like do everything. Making any movie is hard. It'll never get easier. There are several points where you think, you know, how do you break through when there's so many other people trying to do the same thing? You know, it's tough.
Some of our other productions here. This one is £5 and this one is $7.50.
I know it sounds really trite, but you've just got to end up betting on yourself and just not give up. Whenever people ask me for advice on how to get started in the industry, the only advice I can give them is to just go out and make their own films. I wouldn't say I'm proud of every single frame in these films because they're, you know, it's really stupid and some of it is really lame, but I made hours and hours of stuff and just tried to kind of learn by my own mistakes.
Oh. Do you want to be a filmmaker for the future?
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to go into films and do all sorts of things.
With Baby Driver, like, there was a lot of pressure to do a sequel. I thought, well, if I'm going to do a sequel, I want to do something else in between. so that then if I did another American film next, like I'd done this piece of British cinema, you know, in between. And that's what the Soho film, Last Night in Soho, became. So it's like very different. I love those genres, and I want to find out a way of doing something new within a genre that I've loved.
Edgar, I suppose the main question is, what exactly is splatter?
Well, splatter is a term for all manner of gory effects, you know, films, theatre, fancy dress, practical jokes, whatever. We don't tend to sort of splash out much on effects on my films, so we just head down for the supermarket for the cheap and nasty.